Well, hi again, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Sports Scene here on WLCS TV 20, Lorain City Schools Television. I'm Tim Alcorn with WEOL Radio, and of course, each and every week here on the program, we like to sit down and talk sports with somebody from the Lorain sports scene. Well, our guest today has been on Sports Scene enough that we consider him a Lorainite. It's Joe Tait, the voice of the Cleveland Cavs and the Cleveland Rockers. Joe has appeared numerous times on this set, and of course, each and every spring, he makes his trip to Lorain to MC the Lorain Sports Hall of Fame banquet. And he's also a member now of the Lorain Sports Hall of Fame. So as I said, not only is he the voice of the Cavs and the Rockers, but certainly Lorain, basically your second home, correct, Joe?
It would appear that way. After all, I'm eating at your house when this is over. If that doesn't make me a local, nothing will.
Well, technically, I'm a South Amerstonian. I don't even get to see my own show. I don't get Lorain cable. So
I've never seen this show either. I don't know whether it goes anywhere or not.
It's kind of like our own little version of Wayne's World.
That's right.
Party time, party time. Well, as we sit down and tape this program, we're a little bit past the halfway point of the Cavs' 2002-2003 season. And as far as the one-loss record is concerned, it certainly hasn't been a banner campaign. But as you look at things, your synopsis is how the first half of the season has gone.
Well, first of all, we're a lot past the halfway mark, and that's good. 52 down and 30 to go. I think 10-42 kind of speaks for itself, but you know, they knew what they were getting into when they took this route and jettisoned some bigger payrolls and some guys who, you know, at their prime only got us 29 wins anyway, so they figured let's retrench, retool, and cut it right back down to bedrock and rebuild. And that's exactly what's going on. And of course, anyone out there who has kids knows when you've got kids, every day is an adventure unto itself, and you're never really too sure what's going to happen. Sometimes really good things happen. A lot of times, really bad things happen. And we've had more bad than good this year, but in the long run, it has been steps in the right direction. Baby steps, but at least we've advanced from being embarrassed to just being beaten. I know that's, you know, that's like Custer saying, yeah, well, we survived with 2 horses and an Indian scout, but hey, you know, you have to look for the bright side wherever you can find it. It's been a tough campaign, but people don't believe this when I say it, Tim, but this has been one of the more interesting seasons that I think I've ever put in with the Cavaliers because of the fact that it's kids, and you see people making strides, figuring out what's going on. We don't have a lot of veterans to kind of take them over the rough spots. They got to go over them by themselves and learn from their mistakes. And I still believe that the foundation for winning basketball will be found in this group of people we have right now.
You're a guy who has seen this team night in and night out. You're probably one of very few people who has actually sat and watched this team play every basketball game. Where have you seen strides? Where have you seen some progress?
Well, I think, first of all, Carlos Boozer is going to be a ball player. I mean, he's solid, he's a producer, he's hard-nosed, he's smart. He is a plus factor. And a second-round draft choice, nobody figured he'd even make the ball club. Smush Parker, a rookie free agent. They didn't think he'd get out of camp. And he, until he sprained his ankle recently, had been starting at point guard and playing rather well. He's got a hard-nosed attitude to him, and he's not the dumbest guy that ever came down the road. So you put the brains with the attitude, and you got a guy that in the long run may turn out to be our point guard. DeJuan Wagner is, of course, he started off with the kidney problems and got a late start, hit the wall, as most rookies do, and then they made him into a point guard, which has been the kiss of death for about 3 players this year in the Cavaliers, trying to find somebody who can play point guard. And now, before someone throws something at the television screen, I know we had Andre Miller, one of the better point guards in the NBA, but, you know, it's easy, Tim, to make judgments when it's not your money. And they made it very perfectly clear to the Cavaliers that Andre Miller, if he stayed, was going to want top dollar, max dollar next year. And, you know, it sounds a little cold, but nobody was coming to see Andre Miller play. As good as he was, he had about as much charisma as that ball. So, you know, he was a good ball player, and I'm sure he'll have a fine career. But right now, the Cavaliers are looking to put something together that will bring people back to the arena, and they honestly didn't think that Andre Miller would necessarily be a part of that. Now, they got Darius Miles.
Well, I think that's the question. Did they get equal value?
Of course not. No, and at times I'm not sure where Darius is. Even when he's on the floor, I'm not sure where he is because he has these lapses. And, you know, the only positive thing I guess we can say about Darius right now, you know, he's that guy that does this when he gets a basket.
Yeah, what is that?
Well, I just know this. He does that every time he gets a basket. He is in no danger this year of getting a headache.
Well, that speaks volumes, Joe.
Yes.
His athleticism, though, I mean, that was the word when we got Darius Miles. He's a high-flying act, you know, he'll electrify the crowd and so forth. You really haven't even seen a lot of that.
No, well, unfortunately for Darius, he seems lost a lot of the time. Maybe people were misled because he played out in L.A. Clipper country where basketball is something of a carnival. They roll the ball out, guys run up and down the floor, and, you know, in a totally undisciplined atmosphere, he probably can get out there and jive with the best of them. But you tell him play some D, and, you know, then they made him a point guard, which was an absolute disaster. It's been a tough year for Darius. He does have some talent. It's just going to, you know, get everything from here on up squared away, and maybe he'll come back and do it next year. I don't know.
But you believe this group of young players, the Wagners, the Boozers, Darius, Smush Parker, that's the core group that the Cavs are going to build with and become a contender with?
With Ricky Davis, who really has established himself now, and with Zydrunas Ilgauskas. And okay, so Z's not the greatest defensive center in the league. So what? He's getting 18 points and 8+ rebounds a game. And when was the last time we had to go back to Brad Daugherty to find somebody that had those kind of numbers? And Brad Daugherty never distinguished himself at the defensive end of the floor either. You take what you can get. You should be happy that we've got those kind of offensive numbers from Zydrunas Ilgauskas. In fact, he's happy just to be walking around after all those foot surgeries.
I want to veer off on a bit of a tangent because Z, of course, made the All-Star game, only played 4 minutes, which is probably another issue, but that had to be a heartwarming thing for people involved with the Cavs because only those in the organization like yourself realize how truly hard he worked to get back to that level.
Absolutely. He was rewarded by being selected to the All-Star team, and that's a great accomplishment. It really kind of mirrors all of the effort that he put into getting back. He could have taken the money and gone back home and bought Lithuania, but he chose to stay here and rehab and work and go through 3 or 4 operations to the point now where it appears he is healthy.
I want to ask you about the dismissal of John Lucas. I know you got along well with Luke. Certainly, I've told you before, the pregame interviews with you and Luke on WEOL with Cavs basketball were just a hoot. But what transpired there, and why is he now gone as the head coach?
Well, there's a myriad of reasons why. Nothing major, lots of minors. I think John was a little concerned because I know he voiced it on more than one occasion that this team was probably going to end up going about 12-60, and that at the end of the year he'd be tossed out with the bathwater, you know, and he wanted, I think, some assurances that he'd be back, no matter how bad this season was. I think he worked so very, very hard on trying to get the young players involved in the NBA in a positive way and stay out of trouble and all of that stuff, that at times he really didn't stick with the X's and the O's, and the team suffered because of it. I think he just wore him out. I think the job really just wore him out. And when we went on that West Coast road trip, we won a game out there, but we were against a Seattle team that night that, you know, we could have picked up 5 people here, including Ray Ebersol, and defeated the Seattle Supersonics. So it was a disastrous trip. The last 2 games against Golden State and Denver were horrible. I mean, they were an embarrassment. Embarrassing, brainless basketball. And I think at that point, ownership, management, you know, they said, okay, we're geared to take the losing. We can live with the losing, but we want to see effort. We want to see some progress, and we're not seeing it, so long, John.
You've been around a lot of teams where managers have been fired, coaches have been fired. Do you get a sense something's about to break here? A change needs to be made. Is that something that you've been around professional sports so long, you just have an innate feel for it?
They caught me by surprise. I thought they'd probably let him go at the All-Star break, but they pulled the trigger a little bit sooner than that. So on that particular day, yeah, it caught me by surprise. But I figured he probably would not last the year.
So you had a sense that a change needs to be made?
Yeah, because things were just kind of unraveling there.
How do you feel about Keith Smart as you watch this team play? I think it's about 10, 12 games as we sit and tape this show.
Well, Keith, first of all, was a great organizer, and immediately you saw the organization come back to the club that wasn't there in the latter days of the John Lucas regime. He picked up a couple of very good assistant coaches in Mike Bratz and Clifford Ray, who really are teachers and have gone very, very hard at getting some knowledge, information, and understanding to these ball players. He instituted a dress code. Prior to that, we looked like bag ladies on parade when we went on an airplane because some of the things those guys wore were defied description. Now you wear suits to home games and you wear casual clothes on the road, but no gym shoes, no jeans, no sweatshirts. In fact, the flight attendant, when she saw us coming to get on the plane after Keith instituted that, thought the wrong team was coming to the plane. She didn't recognize anybody. So he's a good organizer. He is the complete opposite of John. John, John, he was bombastic. He was fun. He was always kind of go, go, go. Keith is very low key, very quiet. He says what he wants done in a quiet way, and thus far it's worked. I realized the one-loss record didn't turn around, but nobody expected it. They just wanted to see this team get a little discipline, get a little cohesion, and continue to improve, and he has done that.
Of course, Keith is known for the game-winning shot in the NCAA tournament when he played at Indiana. So a guy that has played for Bobby Knight must have some sort of inner intensity. I mean, he may not show it outwardly, but if you play for the General, you have to have some sort of gut and fire.
So did Randy Whitman.
That's true.
Yes.
But, I mean, I would imagine there is an intensity there.
Where?
Within Keith Smart.
Oh, within Keith Smart.
Maybe not within Whitman.
Yeah, Randy, and I've said this before, and I don't want to leave on a cheap shot, but Randy, if I had to choose a next-door neighbor, Randy Whitman would be the man I choose. He was one of the finest human beings I've met, period. But he just didn't have it in him to be a head coach. Now, maybe down the road, coming off his 2 years' experience with us, he can come back to head coaching and be a good head coach. But he sure didn't have it when he was with us.
By the way, speaking of Keith Smart's dress code, would he approve of your sweater? I'm glancing up at the monitor, and it doesn't do it justice, Joe. That's a very colorful sweater.
Yeah, in fact, I have worn this sweater on the plane. As long as I'm not wearing gym shoes, which I'm not, and
so you have to adhere to the dress code.
I didn't have to. I asked him about that. He said, you can wear whatever you want to. But then again, I never fell into the bag lady category to begin with. So this is no problem for me.
Well, actually, I meant that as a compliment. It is very colorful.
I'm glad they're not using any chroma key on this show because they'd have a tough time figuring out a color that's not on the sweater someplace.
That's exactly right. You mentioned before about Andre Miller and the ability to put fannies in the seats. And that leads me down a lane that I'm sure the folks are wondering, why did it take him 15 minutes to bring up this kid who's playing at Akron St. Vincent St. Mary High School? I think LeBron is his name. And you have some interesting thoughts about whether or not you'd like to see LeBron James in a Cavs uniform.
I've never heard of him.
Never heard of him?
No.
He's a
All right.
young man wears number 23.
Yeah, it's almost impossible not to talk about LeBron James. I mean, all over the country, we run into LeBron James questions, and it's been a fascinating thing to watch from the sideline. I have very mixed emotions about LeBron James with the Cavaliers. First of all, from a business standpoint, you get LeBron James, you sell out the season instantly. I mean, they'd be fighting down at the ticket booth to get their tickets for the season. That's a big plus when you look at the seats that are empty down there now. Also, television would be a money producer, the commercials, all the other. LeBron James would bring a ton of cash instantly to the Cavaliers at a time when they could use some cash. So how can you go against that? The one thing that bothers me, and of course, I don't have to worry about at least I don't now unless the paychecks stop, then I worry. And that is, he's going to bring a ton of baggage with him to the Cavaliers. Probably if he went away to Seattle or Atlanta or Orlando or someplace like that, a lot of the posse, and believe me, he's got a bigger posse than about anybody in the NBA, and of course, they'll have no trouble finding their way to Gunda Arena if he's playing for the Cavaliers. They're going to have to do some very serious discussions, as Philadelphia did with Allen Iverson and Allen's mother. They're going to have to sit Mrs. LeBron James down, LeBron's mom, and come to some understanding with her early on, because she could create constant trouble, or she could agree to follow whatever path they want her to follow. I mean, that's the big thing.
Does it irk the Cavs that a lot of people think they're tanking this season? I mean, you talk to Jim Paxson, you talk to folks involved with this organization. Is that a bothersome thing?
No, because most sports fans are stupid.
That's true.
Yes, and therefore you can't change that. You can't change. They're going to think what they think. They're going to believe what they believe. I don't care how much information you can put out on the table. They're not going to change their minds. Yeah, they're losing. And there's enough sports writers and sports announcers around the country who are saying the same thing. They are also stupid. I mean, let's face it. If the Cavaliers went 0-82, lost every game, they would have a 25% chance of getting the first pick as the worst team in the league. Now, we may still be the worst team in the league, but 25% chance in 13 years, one worst team has had the first round draft pick. And the other thing about LeBron, do I think LeBron James is going to come into the league and just set it on fire? Absolutely not. I mean, right now he's a young man who is physically advanced over most of his peers at the high school level. And when he gets into the pros, he's going to be playing with guys who are every bit as physical, every bit as advanced, and he's going to have to earn his spurs. There's a kid out in Phoenix this year, Stoudemire,
yes,
who probably is as well adjusted to the NBA out of high school than anybody has since Moses Malone came in to pro ball out of high school. But you look at all the other high school kids. Kevin Garnett took time, Tracy McGrady took time, etc., etc. They all take time. Jermaine O'Neal, he came in and he looked like Sagana Diop. I mean, and then now in his 7th year, he's an all-star. He's a great ball player. I'm not going to tell you Sagana's going to be a great ball player in 7 years, but I'll guarantee you Sagana will be much better than he is right now.
And the other thing is, not only is it the style of play, but the lifestyle of the NBA. The 82 games, the flight after flight going from city to city to city. Now, certainly St. V's has been a road show this year, but not nearly to the extent of what that would be like in the NBA. That's a grind.
No, and I'll guarantee you they don't run into the flotsam and jetsam that they will see in the NBA when they get to these particular cities, because they're out there looking for young, fresh, name talent. And the older veterans, they've been around, they've been stung a few times, and they know how to deal with it. But kids are oftentimes just swept away with all of the stuff that comes at them. And boy, it comes at them. It's like jumping into a garbage disposal.
Well, certainly if he ends up in Cleveland, it'll be a frenzied atmosphere.
Yeah, and it'll be even tougher for him. But from the Cavs standpoint and from the financial standpoint, it'd be fabulous to have him, because it would put the team in a financial plus mode instantly. It just, so many good things would happen financially for the club with LeBron James. Then, of course, it's a question of how is LeBron going to deal with all this? And how are the Cavs going to deal with LeBron? And, you know, they've got a team babysitter now. That's not his title, but Earl Patton is the team babysitter.
I thought it was you.
No, they don't want me as the team babysitter. You know, paddling is passé. But they've got a guy that right now is with the club on the road trips to kind of help them over the rough spots, get them out of trouble, you know, questions and answers. Poor Earl's going to need a staff of about 4 to cope with what's coming if LeBron shows up with the Cavaliers.
There are those who say if they don't get LeBron, this franchise is in deep trouble. They're a long way away from winning. As you say, there's a 75% chance they don't end up with him.
Right.
How close do you feel they are to a winner, even without LeBron James?
Well, let's face it, folks, there are some other rather talented ball players out there in the draft. There's that 17-year-old kid from Yugoslavia. I won't even attempt his name, and if we don't get him, I don't care. Carmelo Anthony is a very good ball player out of Syracuse. That's the sum and substance of people I know by name because Terry Pluto told me who they were. And I don't follow the college game at all, except down at the D3 level, and I know none of those guys are coming. But yeah, there are going to be people available that will make this team. You know, because I think you could probably find somebody else through a trade that you can bring into this Cavs ball club that will make them a better team on the floor in that first year than LeBron James will.
They need a veteran, though.
Yes.
We mentioned all these young kids. They need a veteran stabilizing force. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and a talented veteran stabilizing force. I mean, Bimbo Coles is a stabilizing force now that he's back with us physically, but Bimbo's at the end of his career, and he can't play the way he used to play. He has helped, but he's not going to help you win any ball games.
Going back to Keith Smart, do you feel he has a legitimate shot of being the head coach next year, or do you think his interim title will stick and there'll be another guy on the bench?
The one thing he's got going for him is they're still paying Mike Fratello. They're still paying Randy Whitman. They're still paying John Lucas. That's a lot of cash for head coaches who are no longer with us. Keith Smart is working at a price that everybody can deal with except maybe Keith. And so his chances of maybe going another year, I think are fairly good. You never know. I mean, they don't call me up and ask me before they make these decisions. But I'd like to see him get a legitimate shot at running the show. And then we'll see where we go from here.
Just out of curiosity, as you said that, it just brought a question to my mind. Has a GM ever said to you in any of your work with the Indians, the Cavs, the Barons, hey, Joe, what do you think's going on here? You got any thoughts on this? Ever?
Oh, I think every general manager has at one time or another asked me what I thought.
I mean, not to hire or fire, I understand that, but just, you know, you're watching all these games, what do you think?
Yeah, there are those. I've had some rather serious discussions with Jim Paxson where he's bounced some things off me, but you know, he doesn't pick up the phone and say, hey, Joe, this is Jim. I'm going to fire the coach today. What do you think?
I understand that. But
I mean, that doesn't happen that way. The last guy who did something like that was Bill Fitch. And that was many moons ago when basketball was an entirely different breed of cat.
And you had a different relationship with Bill Fitch than you've had with Fratello, with Lucas, with Keith. I mean, that was a different animal back then.
Yeah, it really was. Well, the whole game was different back in those days. And, yeah, that was back in the days when I saw more game film than the players did. And in fact, just to show you how it's changed, we had Mike Mitchell, who was an all-star for the Cavs in '81. Now is still playing at the age of 104 over in Italy and averaging 24 points a game. Mike was a rookie with us, and I used to watch the game films all the time with Fitch. And they had Mike up in his room, and Mike was having a tough time figuring out how this one particular play went. Fitch, in exasperation, turned off the projector. We're not talking videotape here. This is film. And he said, Joe, what's supposed to happen on this play? And without thinking, I said, well, you're supposed to do da-da-dee-da-da-da-da-da, and I explained how it was supposed to work.
Little X and O.
And then Fitch turned back to Mitchell and said, if the stupid play-by-play announcer can get this right, why can't you? And you know, I didn't mind him calling me stupid. He called me stupid a lot. But the point of it was, I really felt sorry for Mike. And that was the last time I ever watched game films with Bill. And that's when I started to become a tourist, which I have now developed, you know, over the years to the point wherever I get a chance to get up, get going, and get out and get away, I do. But that was the precise moment where I quit being the gym rat and became the traveling person that I am today.
Every time you come on Sports Scene, Joe, there's a fresh story to tell. That's a great story.
Well,
so we have at
I've
least
been at this for 33 years.
Well, you've been doing Sports Scene, I think, for about 15 now.
Right.
So there's always something to be learned when you come on the program.
Yeah.
Hey, we're out of time. It flew by once again. As always, appreciate your presence.
Thank you.
You brightened up our set today. There's no doubt about
glad.
that.
I'm glad.
And as always, we'll continue to listen to you right here on WEOL.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do appreciate it. Our guest this week on Sports Scene, you hear him all the time on AM 930 WEOL as the voice of the Cleveland Cavs and the Cleveland Rockers, Joe Tait. We're glad he could join us right here on WLCS TV 20 Lorain City Schools, and we're glad you could join us as well. For Joe and Joe Bock, B-O-C-K in the studio, I'm Tim Alcorn. We'll see you again next week. So long, everybody.
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools TV 20 WLCS.
To purchase a high-quality copy of the program you just viewed, please call Lorain City Schools Television at 282-8400.